Central Asia has been attracting adventurers since the times of Marco Polo. In their notes, medieval mavericks filled the semi-mythical area at the world's end with fantastic creatures and unprecedented miracles and riddles. To this day, this mysterious region attracts Western tourists with its landscapes and biological diversity. Together with the outdoor KZ permanent TV expedition, you will travel to the most picturesque corners of Central Asia, get acquainted with its flora and fauna, and immerse yourselves in the everyday life and traditions of the people living in the wild. In this program, we are going to visit the Ukok Plateau with the World Wildlife Fund experts. We will get to the very border between Kazakhstan, Russia, Mongolia and China to collect new data on the wildlife of Kazakhstan's Altai mountains using camera traps. En route, we will learn more about local archaeologists, find out how the barrel barrows differ from the Pazyryk burials and what technologies have been used to weave the world's oldest surviving carpet. To do that, we will have to dip into the Persian city of Isfahan. The Altai-Sayan Eco-Region program assigned the World Wildlife Fund experts Alexei Grachev and Saltore Sapabayev to update the status of the snow leopard population in the Altai Mountains. And isn't that a challenging task? The leopard stays at the very top of the food pyramid, and to find its ecology, one has to collect data on all animals making up the leopard's diet. Current techniques utilize camera traps to help zoologists get more accurate data than before. We assess that the population of the snow leopard in Kazakhstan is around 110-130 animals. All over Kazakhstan. The snow leopard population in eastern Kazakhstan Oblast is not very high as compared with the Jungara Plateau, with about 50 leopards, or with the northern Tian Shan roamed by about 60 animals. Within Kazakhstan, the leopard population in the Altai Mountains does not exceed 15 animals. Back in the Soviet times, the Kazakhstani School of Zoology had been one of the best schools. Many zoologists had collected concurrent data on the snow leopard. However, neither of them ever challenged the risk of picking it as their dissertation subject. The ounce was too evasive, and even those who had spent years working up in the mountains never saw this mysterious cat in their whole lifetime. It is only now that the new technologies allow scientists to peep under the veil of the mystery.
Раньше исследователи, изучая снежного барса, дожидались.
The snow leopard researchers used to wait for the winter to come and put on their skis to explore its snow tracks. Nowadays, the advanced distant research methods are used, and namely camera traps. The World Wildlife Fund provided us with 20 camera traps so we could explore the Kazakhstani side of the Altai Mountains using this new technique. Snow leopards inhabit the most out-of-the-way places. A researcher who decides to plunge into the study of the snow leopard will have to master his mountaineering techniques, become a tireless trekker and surviving expert. I've heard quite a lot about the Ukok Plateau. Literature tells us that many great zoologists had done their research here. And now gods are smiling at me too. I visited the Ukok Plateau this year. We are flying to Eastern Kazakhstan Oblast today. We have Saltore, Maxim and other members of our expedition. The goal is to explore the Kazakhstani side of the Altai Mountains in order to find the snow leopard. The last year's data failed to prove its presence in that area, which stirred concern with the world environmentalists. The World Wildlife Fund was concerned too, and it was at its request that we are now on this trip. In Ust-Kamenogorsk, the guys find accommodations in a small apartment which turns into temporary headquarters of the expedition. All equipment and outfit has been fit up and packed. Time to hit the road. You can make it from Ust-Kamenogorsk to the Katon-Karagay National Park in 5 to 6 hours. The distance is 380 kilometers. You can still see traces of spring floodwaters along the Bukhtamar riverside. During the ice drift, ice blocks oftentimes jam the river to the effect that water floods the adjacent banks for miles and miles around. The Katon-Karagay National Park office is located in the district town of the same name. The national park is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and part of the transboundary conservation project called the Altai-Sayan eco-region. A meeting with the environmental monitoring specialist has been scheduled at the park's office. We will have to explore the southwestern part of the Ukok Plateau, in the immediate vicinity of the border with Russia. In 2015, camera tracks were put up in Saribel of the Ashat forestry. What they captured was the Palaz cat, an animal from the IUCN Red List of threatened species. Document processing takes but a few minutes and the expedition sets off for its research area. While getting ready for this trip, the guys scrupulously gathered all data on the Ukok Plateau. It is by looking back that you can see what species had wandered about in this area thousands of years ago.
Плато Укок очень знаменитое место. Здесь археологи.
The Ukok Plateau is a famed place. It was in this permafrost where archaeologists found the Princess of Ukok, with golden decorations depicting wild animals. It is also interesting for us, zoologists. Today, the border between the four countries runs across the southern Altai. Although 2,500 years ago, the whole region had been inhabited by people of cultural and ethnic entity. Scientists call it the Pazyryk or Birel culture. It was first described in 1865 by academician Vasily Radlov during excavations of the Beryl and Katanda barrows. Ancient people of the region were primarily engaged in nomadic grazing. Noble men were buried in timber bunkers laid in the permafrost of northern slopes. The funerary implements exhibited a lot of decorations made in the so-called animal style. One of the most favorite subjects was the attack of the winged leopard or griffin on the Alpine Ibex. Some decorations showed the griffin holding the ungulate's head in its beak. Permafrost is not typical of the Altai Mountains, but the water soaking through the mound would turn into ice that never melted. Scientists attribute the phenomenon to the peculiar design of funerary cells. Felt and wool fabrics remained virtually intact in ice. The world's oldest surviving pile carpet was found during excavations of one of the Pazyryk barrows. It is now housed at St. Petersburg's Hermitage Museum. Under the microscope, yarn of ochreous, red, green and yellow colors was found. Knot density of the carpet is approximately 3,600 knots per square decimeter. It is a high figure even for current-day carpet making. During the outdoor KZ team expedition to Iran, we specifically visited a carpet-making shop in the ancient city of Isfahan. The shop was specializing in carpet making based on ancient techniques. The Pazyryk carpet was woven with double knots in a symmetrical design called the courtiers, well known to the Persians. They call it tork, or the Turkish knot.
We have got two types of the knots. One of them is a Persian knot or single knot, another one is a double knot. What's the difference between these two? When weaver wants to make a knot for double knots, let's say, we were going to get two bays from front and two bays from back, and then between these four bays they are going to make a knot like this. For single knot, weaver must be get one base from front and one base from back, and then between these two bases they are going to make a knots.
Just like thousands of years ago, the wool is made and dyed by hand. The same natural dyes are used. The nut is used to make the black color, indigo for the blue, saffron for the brown color, and the pomegranate for the red. The ancient art of carpet making is time-consuming. It takes a few years for one worker to make one item, and the price for such carpets may well exceed $100,000. The oldest carpet of the Alpine mountains is well known to Iranian carpet makers. They even make its copies for tourists. Similar carpet-making techniques of the Altai Mountains and of Persia suggest the existence of cultural and commercial ties between Altai and Mesopotamia back then. The tour in the depth of unrecorded time is over, and now it's time for the expedition to set off. The very first station on our way is the Tautekeli Lodge in a hollow between Tabagatai and southern Altai ridges. The guys will spend a relatively comfortable night in a warm lodge, but tomorrow they will have to stay overnight up in the mountains. It had been raining all night long, and so the morning was greeted by heavy fog. By 8 o'clock, however, the sun has breached through the fog to emblaze the snow-capped peaks. The expedition really lucked out. It's so much nicer to climb up a mountain in good weather. The first batch of video traps were installed at the upper tree line near the headwaters. It will take a whole day to climb up to them. One must walk stealthily, holding the camera ready and listening to every rustle. While on the trail, one can unexpectedly run against a red deer, a musk deer, or even a bear. Any trophy is good for a photo seeker. Earlier in the spring, when the snow had become wet and heavy, a huge avalanche slid down from the top. It uprooted mighty larches and cedars, clearing a swath of felled trees. Compacted snow can withstand a man's weight and is good for going up. The avalanche is not dangerous anymore, as long as you are not here in March for poor luck. In the shadowy part of the hollow, the 10-meter layer of snow can last for the whole summer. Here comes the first photo trophy, a roe. It must have crossed the national border. Roe deer spend the winter in relatively dry hollows of the Altai Mountains, while in the springtime they migrate into Kazakhstan to find sepia high mountain ranges. The summits are still lined with snow, while spring is in full bloom along the rivers. It's the kandik or fawn lily, a flowering bulb of the Liliaceae family. Kandik is a Turkic word for dog's tooth. Mountain hunters used to make a salad from kandik to counter their vitamin deficiency in the spring. With loud singing, the thrush is staking out its scum for a willow shrub. Its song may seem like a love ode, but in fact it is a luculent warning to any unwelcome guests, saying that the thrush is the sole and rightful master of the area. Someone is greeting us with a shrill whistle, a picker. A small rodent of the Lagaforma order has a second name of Senastavka, meaning the hay pile builder, owing to its habit of forming small piles of hay to feed on in winter. Each step up on the steep slope is a hard one. It's not easy to keep up with the snow leopard or the teke, mountain goats. The teke usually live on the upper tree line, going down below the line in cold weather. When it gets warmer, they go up to the tops, just like the snow leopard. The mountain goat is an excellent climber, not afraid of steep cliffs at all. The guys spot a herd of Alpine Ibex, about 65 animals, and are trying to approach them. There are only females with calves and young males in this herd. In winter, the Alpine Ibex flock in bigger mixed herds, while in the spring they split into age and sex groups. Females tend to stay with females and young males form their own teenage groups. Older males stay in their stag pool. There are also small kids in the herd. They are a few weeks old. It means this year's fawning had begun a bit earlier. The number of heads in one herd, the so-called herd index, is an important environmental indicator as it can be indirectly used to assess the status of the Alpine Ibex population. The leopard's fate in turn depends on the size and density of the Alpine Ibex population. To ensure the leopard's successful hunting, there must be more mountain goats, otherwise the energy demands for prey may turn unacceptably high. Here we have the first camera trap. Now let's see what we've got here. The guys will scrutinize the pictures back at the office, and here we can scan through the icons and images on the mobile phone. It was the red deer who showed up for the photo session. Sometimes the red deer lies down like that to sway its antlers all night long. The roe deer seems to be in a hurry. Of course, it has no time to stop because it's got a long way to go. The elk, on the contrary, is taking its time. It is a territorial animal. It has to closely survey its area. There is something new up in the tree. Looks like it hadn't been here before. It needs a good smell check. The trap has to be tasted for the sake of clarity. Nope, unpalatable. Just let it hang where it is. The wolf is following someone's scent. The prey is so close, so hungry, no time to look around. The black grouse is restless. You bet, there are so many willing mouths in the woods waiting to treat themselves with fresh grouse drumsticks. Here, the wolverine, for example, must have smelled a rat. The wolverine seems to be deeply interested in the camera trap. It must be hearing the camera shutter. A human ear cannot grasp it, but Wolverine's hearings is by far better than ours. The musk deer is cautiously stepping to control each foot. It is best not to make any noise in the taiga, as there are too many predators around. This animal, looking like a dime-sized deer, is in fact the smallest even-toed ungulate in Kazakhstan. The musk deer males weigh 15 to 18 kilograms, while females are 10 to 15 kilograms. The musk deer leads a solitary life, and it is only during the mating season that the male attracts females by the smelling secretion of its musk glands. The female can smell it being dozens of kilometers away. The deer's musk seems appealing to not only female deer but also to humans. They have used it in perfumery for a long time. The musk deer may be restless because it smelled a lynx that had trodden the trail. And it's not just a lynx, but a whole brood. The mother is leading its kittens for their first hunt. They will be following it to copycat all of its movements. And this is the lynx's favorite treat, the mountain hare. There are 3 species of hares in Kazakhstan: the mountain hare, the brown hare and the Tolai hare. Northern hares are much larger than their southern cousins. And these are the snowcocks. There are 2 subspecies of snowcocks in Kazakhstan, the Altai snowcock and the Himalayan snowcock. The latter is a game bird, whereas hunting of the former is prohibited. Some of the memory cards have been checked. No pictures of the snow leopard. It's hard to pour over thousands of pictures out in the field, so they will have to be scrutinized back at the base station. And now it's time to start thinking of setting up a camp. We must get down to the river valley before dark to pitch a camp. At daybreak, the travelers are awakened by the sounds similar to those of a boiling kettle. But who might be boiling at this unearthly hour? The sounds are coming from a clearing by the river. We've got to get closer. Looks like there is some show going on there. Dancers in black tuxedos and ruby tricorns on their heads with white fangs are beginning a nightly tournament. The actors' bright outfit and graceful movements make this show very emotional. We wish our children and grandchildren too to have an opportunity to enjoy the grouse-licking show. The traps have been checked up in this gorge. The guys will now have to go down to the lodge and transfer to the next monitoring site, the Chindagatoy landmark and Buktama and Bulandi lakes. On their way down, however, yet another encounter is up for them. Not only exciting, but also a little risky one. Bears shake off from their winter hibernation in early April or sometimes in late March. At first, they are not very mobile, digging up roots near their hibernacle. In bad weather, they can get to their winter quarters again for a couple of days' nap. But with fresh grass standing up, flowers beginning to bloom and bumblebees buzzing, bears remember that they had been banting for half a year. There's some urgent catching up to do. This is the time when they tirelessly roam about, digging up some roots or finding a chipmunk's food stock. Given the chance, they will swallow both the stock and its owner. Killing an ungulate, a red deer for instance, is a real stroke of good fortune. Bears are predators after all. They are also dangerous for humans. Every year, dozens of tourists fall victims of bears worldwide. Bears are especially spiteful in natural reserves. They gradually get rid of their fear of man in areas where no bear hunting is allowed. The bear cubs were born in the winter den. In early April, as they got out of the dug den into the big world, they found a myriad of amazing things in need of exploring, touching and tasting. However, this world is not only beautiful but also perilous. Therefore, the strict mother is lavish of smacks and slaps if she sees her cubs are too reckless. 2 years after, the mother bear will drop a hint to her cubs that it's time to hit the trail. Food resources in her territory are limited and the cubs will now have to provide for themselves. Meanwhile, the expedition is leaving the Tautekeli Valley to get closer to the Buktama headwaters. The higher up in the mountains, the lower the temperature drops and the higher the snow cover gets. The Chindagatoy landmark sees the spring come a month and a half later than the middle reaches of the Buktama. The expedition's task is to get to the camera traps installed on Buktama and Bulandi lakes, and that's no easy task. The Ukok Plateau spans 4 countries: Kazakhstan, Russia, Mongolia and China. On this side we have China, while Russia is right there, and Mongolia a little bit farther away. This area is part of the extensive Altai-Sayan eco-region. This transboundary research program on the snow leopard monitoring is carried out by all 4 countries. The program was initiated by the World Wildlife Fund. Horses still remain the only vehicle up in the highlands. The weather is turning bad. We have to get to Lake Buktama before nightfall. It is snowing heavier now and the mercury thread is plummeting. We had been to Karatau just a few days ago, enjoying the real summer. It is springtime in the valleys, while here on Lake Buktama we are witnessing the winter in all its glory. There is a small log cabin on the lakeside, built by some hunter a while ago. The glass panes are not in their best shape, but in the weather like this, it is still much more comfortable than being in a tent. Well, as the weather is bad anyway, it might be worth trying to fish and diversify our camping diet.
Ловят хариуса вот на такие вот мормышки.
Such fishing jigs are used to catch the grayling. We have 4 of them here. Good gear, but there is no escaping fate. It looks like we're not going to eat any grayling today. Lake Volantes is dominated by an unnamed peak. It is the highest part of the expedition's route. The traps are set at the altitude of 3,500 meters. Snowfalls are frequent here even in the midsummer. The guys are beating a path in the deep snow but can't get to all of the traps. The algorithm of the weather on the plateau is becoming clear. In the morning, the mountains are usually wrapped in dense fog. The sun breaks through by about 10 o'clock, but grey haze comes from the west in the afternoon, and the snowfall begins. It is better to wait through this weather down below. Good luck this time, there is a vacant shepherd's hut on the riverside. The stove is in good order and so wood must be chopped. Wood chopping may be an absorbing process, but it has to be postponed. We have guests. A white-winged redstart has come to the threshold to inquire who had settled in the abandoned hut. The pied whittier too is a prey to curiosity. It's dull to stay out alone in such weather. Might the travelers leave some crumbles behind? We can't wait to see the pictures, but the laptop is running out of charge. We have to put up with it until we get to Ust-Kamenogorsk. Only some of the tasks have been fulfilled, but it's time to get back to the bosom of civilization.
Мы снова находимся в Усть-Каменогорске, в нашем импровизированном штабе экспедиции.
We are in Ust-Kamenogorsk again, in our impromptu headquarters. It is but a simple apartment we're renting. The first phase of the expedition is over. 15 camera traps out of 20 were taken down. 5 traps remained in their spots due to bad weather conditions. We will have to get back to them in a few weeks. However, these 15 camera traps made hundreds of pictures and videos of various animals, and our current task is identifying them.
И сейчас наша задача их определить.
Now, this camera trap had stayed at the altitude of 2,500 meters. Hey, we have a wolf here, a singleton passing by at night. Yes, here is its back, and here you get a better view. That's very odd. We have looked through 800 pictures. We saw wolves 5 times and yet no single shot of the snow leopard here. And here we have a lynx, also a competitor. That is, the leopard has 2 competing species in the same biome, the lynx and the wolf. And to a certain degree the bear. Here it is, the bear, on the last shot. Do bears prey on mountain goats? Yes, there is literally evidence of bears preying on mountain goats. We did not witness that, but there have been such cases. At what altitudes do the Alpine Ibex and snow leopards live? In summer they stay as high as 3,500 to 4,000 meters, coming down in wintertime. In Tian Shan, the snow leopard has been seen at the lowest altitude of 13 to 1,400 meters, just like the goats. But in Altai, even in southern Altai, the climate is by far more severe. So the upper line of their country should be lower. Yes, the Altai mountains are lower than Tian Shan, and so the snow leopards and the goats range varies from 1,000 to 3,000 meters. A lot of materials have been collected. 3,000 pictures need to be systematized, animals' meeting points must be mapped out, and altitudes and geographic coordinates must be specified. The data obtained will help better understand the wildlife riddles and manage its resources in a more efficient way. And our expedition is over. We are, but for a while, going back to the hectic cities, hoping that we will return to Altai, because this breathtaking land is still filled with its own mysteries and secrets.